And it's always amazing to see where people are. And now that we're having an India town hall, if you could put maybe the state and the city that you're in India in the chat, share it with the whole with all of the attendees. It's always great to see the diversity of people that are joining us. Today, our special guest is President of Hindu University of America, Shri Gayan Vishwanathan, who is currently guiding the growth of Hindu University of America as the president. It's been my honor and privilege to work closely with him over the last 2 years. And Gayanji is just an amazing, thoughtful, person who's been a successful information technology expert, had a career for over 30 years, but he's also a faculty member in HUA's continuing education and certification division. He teaches the orientation to Hindu studies course every quarter, and that is an eye-opening, mind-blowing course, and we'll get some testimonials on that in a little bit. He studied Advaita Vedanta through 2 decades of association with Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati, the founder of the Arsha Vidya Gurukulam group of institutions. And Gayanji, it's always an honor and a privilege to have you on. I know we have some other people in attendance that we're going to elevate to panelists, but let me give it to you to give some context and introduce what we're doing at Hindu University of America and welcome everyone to this important town hall. Gayanji?
Yeah, Ankur, thank you so much. I'd like to give Srikanth Ramdas an opportunity to say a few words. Can you elevate him as a panelist, please? He's a participant right now. Hello, Srikanth.
Namaste.
Namaste. So Srikanth, you want to
sure.
Kick us off with a few words? Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Kalyanji and Ankurji. It is with some honor and my pleasure to be talking about HUA. I have been taking courses with them this year, from the beginning of the year. And I have found that this is something this experience, the learning is something I highly recommend. I've tried to invite as many people as I can to come and join. I think we have for long dreamed about a place, a university, in India and even abroad, but especially in India, that has a lens or view that takes the native Indian view. This has been in development, and we've had about 70 years of our university system. As many of us know, there tends to be a very liberal Marxist approach to historiography, and it has been a big challenge to come forward and take a much more rigorously scholarly view that includes not just the native Hindu perspective, for example, but include everything else. So from that standpoint, my experience with HUA, I can only highly recommend it. I mean, the orientation course with Kalyanji, we are being introduced concept by concept to the hermeneutics, the theory and interpretation of India studies, and whether India has been approached with faith or with suspicion. How long has this been going on? In fact, a lot of our false theories or theories that we read about in the media, especially, they are about just getting close to 2 centuries old. Things like the Aryan invasion theory and so forth. And for some of you, this is already well known. And I think the orientation by itself covers so many different lenses, not just one view, that it's a fantastic summary for people who are seasoned in this field, as well as people who are new and want to understand what is going on and how to get a better overall view of the nature of how India is being viewed, projected, and written about in our daily life. And it does affect us in the daily life. In addition to that, there are other fantastic courses. We've got cutting edge scholarship by Dr. Adluri and Dr. Bagchi, which, for example, a couple of courses I've taken on concern the 19th century view to interpreting India, covering the Enlightenment, the idealism, the Romantic period within Europe. And it includes going and doing such a detailed survey of scholarship and material in academia in German itself and foreign languages. Very impressive, and I think it's very cutting edge. It's not something you will find anywhere else. And there are several courses covering Sanskritam, Vedanta, other aspects of history also that I can only highly recommend, and I'm looking forward to taking them. So overall, my strong recommendation is that you absolutely try to get on to take some courses, definitely the orientation. I think this coming semester, we're also going to have some very interesting courses for youngsters and parents. And from that standpoint, it'll be a good way to get some summer courses for youngsters in mathematics and early concepts in Hinduism. So I can only highly recommend it, and I hope more of you join. And I'm very glad that some of my friends are on the panel or are on this town hall. And with time, you will see a lot more appreciation. I think this is inevitable. And so the more participation, more word of mouth, for which we would be very appreciative. I think it's a great journey. So please do join. So that's what I'd like to say for now.
All right, Shrikant, thank you. I just wanted to start with a voice of a student, from India. Shrikant is based in Bangalore, and he has experienced the university in the last few quarters. So I thought an initial comment from a student would be a good way to begin the university. Okay. Now, by way of introduction, my name is Gayan Vishwanathan. I'm based in Dallas, Texas. The university itself is based in Orlando, Florida, and it's been around for a while. I'm going to share a few slides. Hopefully, my slides will not last more than 30 minutes. And then we'll engage with some Q&A. Now, the way to do Q&A is to type your question in the Q&A box. So there is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. And if somebody has a question, the best way to do it is to go and put the question into the Q&A box, and we'll tee up the questions at the end of the presentation. Okay. So with that, let me begin my brief presentation. All right, here we are. So the title of the presentation is Hindu University of America, an Overview. And it has three purposes. The first purpose is to introduce Hindu University of America. What is it? Why is it there? What makes it unique? Unique. What is its unique value proposition? We will also announce the Greater Bharat scholarships for India and surrounding countries. And lastly, we will end with an encouragement for people to join the university to engage with these courses. Now, first of all, I want to make an important distinction, which is, we are not conceiving of this university, Hindu University of America, as a place where people naturally go to after finishing the 12th grade. You go through 12 years of schooling, and then you go to an undergraduate college or university, and then you get a graduate degree and go on to a PhD. This is a little different. This university is really open to all. It doesn't exclude anybody. What we are finding is a lot of people who are already well settled in their professional lives are also quite interested in learning about Hinduism and Hindu history and so on and so forth. So therefore, this is not a conventional university in the sense that it prepares students for well understood and well established vocational or professional pathways. So then that begs the question, why should anybody come to this university if it doesn't merely prepare you for a vocation or a profession in your life? And I think that's a question we will explore further in this presentation. So without further ado, let's move on. Now, it is important, I want to build some foundations first. Okay, so the very first thing to recognize is the modern university is a Western conception, is of a Western conception. whether you think of a university, and I went to Birla Institute of Technology and Science, Pilani in Rajasthan for my undergraduate degree. And I went to Ohio State University in Ohio, United States, for my graduate degree. But no matter where you go, whether you go to a university in India or whether you go to a university in Europe or in America, the modern university is a product of Western thought. It is a product of Western imagination. And what it is to study, what to study, and in what sequence to study, what is important and what is not important, is a product of Western thought. And insofar as the universities of India replicate the modern Western university to greater or lesser degree, they are operating within a Western paradigm. That's the first thing all of us should know, okay, whether we like it or not. Now, that has certain advantages and it has certain disadvantages. So let's briefly look at that. So I'm going to show this through a certain graph. Okay, so if you look at the last 2000-year history of India in one chart, this is really what happened. What happened was that India was a very, very prosperous civilization. It was a very successful civilization for a long time. In fact, till about 1400 AD, it is demonstrable that India possessed the largest GDP in the entire world. But through a careful process of reconstruction, this is now more or less understood as a reliable fact. And for those of you who want to know more about this, I would refer you to Professor Angus Madison's work at the University of Groningen. Angus Madison is no longer alive, but his work has gotten framed or formalized into the Madison Project, and they're doing exceptional work in terms of this economic study of the economic history and the likely economic future of the world. Okay, and this chart is taken from the statistics developed by Angus Madison. Now, what does this chart say? What it says is, relative to world GDP, what was India's share over a 2000-year history? Okay, and very clearly, whereas the United States and UK, whereas the United States was GDP was almost negligible, UK too for a very long time, India enjoyed an extraordinarily large share of the world's GDP. And then something happened in India. First, there was a wave upon wave upon wave of Islamic invasions, which had a dramatically and drastically negative effect on the Hindu civilization and culture. And second came the Christian colonization, the British colonization. First the Portuguese and the French, and then the Dutch and so on, and then eventually the British, who established a stranglehold on India. And the fortunes of India fell. India's share in the world's GDP fell. At the same time, the UK and Europe's fortunes rose. Now, I could have plotted China on this graph too, but I chose not to because, India and United States and UK are connected today through the English language, whether we like it or not. Now, at the same time, as the economic fortunes followed this trajectory, something happened at the intellectual level. Early on, there were these great universities, Takshashila and Nalanda being the most quintessential, but there are others like Vikramashila and Odantapuri and Ratnagiri, Pushpagiri, and so on. There are many, many, many centers of learning in India. And I've thrown in Alexandria in the mix because Alexandria was also a great center of learning in pre-Christian era. But as time went by, they were replaced decisively by the universities of Europe. And I've again plotted Oxford and Cambridge here as examples, exemplars of the shift in intellectual center of gravity of the world. So as things moved west, we move further along in time. Now you come to America. Now Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, and so on, Chicago, these have become the world's preeminent universities. And of course, India, in its post-independent era, has developed its own universities, JNU, IITs, and many, many others, which are modeled after the Western universities. Okay, so in a certain sense, there has been a supersession, a complete and total supersession of Hindu thought, or Indic thought, if you will, and it has been progressively replaced by a Western worldview, which has now been incorporated and established as the mainstream university model in India as well. This is unquestionable. The consequence of this, of course, before we go to consequence, we were all born here, without exception, somewhere around here. Okay, and the only model we know is this. Even the Oxfords and the Cambridges and the moment of European dominance has receded into history somewhat. And suddenly there is no memory at all of of Takshashila and Nalanda and its contemporary universities. So the consequence, this is the consequence of that. Okay, the consequence is that it elevates Western science, Western humanities, the Western episteme, the Western cosmology as the norm in the world. It proposes that the secular worldview supersedes the religious worldview. Supersedes as in it transcends, it renders religion backward, and more particularly, it primitivizes the Hindu Dharma. Primitivizes Hindu Dharma. This is the consequence of this trajectory of westernization, progressive westernization. So this is the first thing. Now, in the face of this, one of the things that has been unexplored is what happened intellectually during this period. What happened intellectually during this period, the colonial period. Now, how did Hindu thought get slowly, gradually, little by little, eclipsed, superseded, and replaced almost entirely by a Western cosmology, a Western episteme, and a Western way of thinking and being in the world? Okay, so this is a framing of a certain problem. Now, Hinduism was progressively devalued. So, so if you look at the main figures, eventually it was rendered unworthy of formal study, which is why in India, most universities, or nearly all universities, do not have a department of Hindu studies. Because studying Hinduism has been rendered unworthy, inappropriate in a university environment. How did this happen? Well, very briefly, there were some important figures. William Jones, 1700s, James Mill, coming into the 1800s, Thomas Macaulay, 1800s, early 1800s, Max Miller, late 1800s, and our own Jawaharlal Nehru, straddling the 18th and 19th centuries. What happened was a sustained stream of thought was set in motion. William Jones's time was an era of discovery. He discovered Sanskrit, he discovered India, he discovered Hindu thought, Hindu texts, and so on. But he was part of a group of people who were at that time called the Orientalists. Orientalists set up the Royal Asiatic Society in Bengal. James Mill, however, who never visited India, engaged in a completely different paradigm of utter and total denunciation of Hinduism. Okay, so European understanding, at least British understanding, very quickly transformed from wonder and discovery to utter and total denunciation. You have to read James Smith in order to understand what I'm talking about. Then came Thomas Macaulay, who engaged in an extraordinary act of disruption. So the disruption basically was that the traditional educational systems of India was completely uprooted in India, completely destroyed, disrupted, and replaced with missionary-led Christian institutions. So, in my own family, in the past, people, the elders went to Christian institutions like St. Joseph's College, St. Philomena's High School, or Loyola College, or think about St. Stephen's College, and on and on. There are hundreds and hundreds of Christian institutions which were unfortunately built using money extracted from the Hindus. It is important and not often known for Hindus to understand that nearly 45 trillion US dollars was extracted from India. In current day dollar value terms, $45 trillion was extracted by the British from India and transported. The majority of it was transported into England and went into the capitalization of England. It went into the creation of English factories, English industry. It went into the building of great mansions in the British countryside. And many, many British officers who lived in India went back and retired extraordinarily rich, living in estates and mansions and bungalows in the English countryside. They could not have imagined had they lived and worked in England itself in the same period. So a lot of wealth was extracted. Some of it was returned back to India, specifically to build Christian institutions. Not for a moment should we believe or imagine that Christian institutions built in India were financed by money coming from outside of India in that era. Now, today it's different. Today, nearly $2 billion are coming into India every year for bolstering not only Christian institutions, but also other Islamic institutions and so on. But in this period, there was a major disruption. The traditional education was completely lost and marginalized. So if at all it survived in the margins. It survived in the distant ashrams, in the forests, in the mountains, in the Himalayas, through the instrument of a few Swamijis and Gurus who were desperately clinging on to the traditions of India, particularly Hinduism. Now, Max Miller's time was a unique time. He managed the feat of simultaneously praising India's antiquity and denigrating India's present, at the present of his time, which enabled the narrative about Hinduism to be incorporated into a European master narrative in which India's antiquity got conflated with Europe's past, so-called the Aryan past of Europe, and India's presence, the current day presence of Hinduism was reframed as a period of degeneracy, of deterioration, of disintegration, which needed some kind of intervention. And then finally, of course, you have our very good friend, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, our first prime minister. He devalued Hinduism completely. And this particular sequence of events, intellectually, sequence of thought as a history of ideas, has not been properly studied. And this is one of the undertakings of Hindu University of America. And I want to present this as one of its unique characteristics, is that we are very, very interested in this particular era. But that's not only it. We are interested in recovering the past as well. So this is Mill, Macaulay, and Muller. These are the sort of the three M's, the Trimurtis of contemporary Hindu Dvesha, as we call them. So devaluation. Jawaharlal Nehru clearly, back in 1946, said that India must break with much of her past and not allow it to dominate the present. Our lives are encumbered with the dead wood of this past, and all that is dead and has served its purpose has to go. We had to get out of traditional ways of thought and living, which for all the good they may have done in a past age, they have ceased to have significance today. So in other words, he imagined an India in which the past was decisively superseded and the present was built on completely new principles. So this pronouncement of Jawaharlal Nehru consigned Hinduism to India's past, rendering Sanatana Dharma obsolete and irrelevant, and set in motion the idea of a progressive India built on the pillars of science, technology, and secularism. So contemporary India can be framed, all the politics, the economics, the struggle in India can be framed in terms of the specific struggle between two views or two ideas of India, two worldviews. One that supersedes Hinduism, consigns Hinduism to the past, and imagines a post-Hindu India, and another view, another worldview, which seeks to recover, rediscover Hindu thought as a timeless tradition, timeless in the sense that it never becomes obsolete, it never becomes irrelevant. It can be reinterpreted, rediscovered, and reapplied for contemporary times again and again, era after era, age after age. So there you go. Those are the two paradigms. And in contrast, if you look at America, you have here Harvard College, which later on became Harvard University. It was founded as a Puritan Congregationalist institution that trained ministers, Christian ministers, in the English church. The Harvard Divinity School, which emerged out of Harvard College, was founded in 1816. It exists today. So if you go to the Harvard University in Boston, Massachusetts, you'll find that the Harvard Divinity School focuses exclusively on the study of religion, coexists side by side with the Harvard Business School, the Harvard Medical School, the Harvard Law School, and so on. So too in Yale. When Yale College was founded in 1701, it was as a college of religious training for Congregationalist ministers. The Yale Divinity School came into existence in 1822. So right around the time, 1816, 1822, watch those dates, right? That's when Europe went through a phase of secularization, moving from the religious and the theological to the secular. Okay, but the interesting thing is Yale Divinity School exists today as a legitimate school of divinity where Christianity is studied seriously and deliberated upon. Here's another one, Princeton Theological Seminary. It was founded in 1812 under the auspices of the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church. Princeton Theological Seminary is a private school of theology in Princeton. It exists today. It didn't die, even though Princeton Theological Seminary gave rise to Princeton University, one of the great prestigious universities of the world. And Princeton University eventually gave rise to the Institute of Advanced Studies in the 1900s, 1930s to be precise, where most famously its first fellow was none other than Albert Einstein himself. So you can see the Institute of Advanced Studies at Princeton, where Albert Einstein was located, is not even a couple of miles away from Princeton Theological Seminary. They coexist on the same campus. Now, in contrast, in India, in the Indian imagination, no place was ever created for Hindu studies in the university environment. In the imagination of the framers of the Indian Constitution, the leaders of India post-independence, the study of Hinduism was relegated to the margins, almost not allowed in mainstream universities, almost you could say banned. It was banned, if not explicitly, through many, many methods. It was discouraged, it was not given priority, it was not funded properly. It was just disappeared from the mainstream university environments. So it is this context from which we are seeking, to rebuild a university, a Hindu University of America. Unfortunately, one of the challenges we face is that the angle of approach to the study of Hinduism today is borrowed from the West predominantly. Because, at Princeton Theological Seminary, at Harvard Divinity School, and at Yale Divinity School, they do study Hinduism. Not because they want to understand Hinduism, but because they want to understand it as a rival religion to Christianity. And Christianity has a long tradition of studying its rivals, its competitors. So here, the methods that have been developed by secular theoreticians and Christian theologians over the centuries have given many, many angles of approach. So, for example, you can approach Hinduism, Hindu studies, through the lens of philosophy, through the lens of theology, through the lens of history, through the lens of religious studies, through geopolitics, through anthropology, through sociology, through psychology, through philology, and on and on. This is only a sample. But if you see, all of the methods that are used to study Hinduism today have one thing in common. All these methods, all these approaches continue to primitivize and devalue and render Hinduism as obsolete. Obsolete means what? It belongs to the past, no longer the present. It's done. We had to think in terms of a post-Hindu India or a post-Hindu world, while, unfortunately, because Hindus continue to exist, we had to study them from the standpoint of trying to understand why the Hindus keep persisting. They should have died long time ago. They should have converted. They should have become Christian. They should have become Islamic. They should have become secular. But for some weird reason, they keep surviving and they keep existing in current times. So in this backdrop, our question was, can we create a space for authentic Hindu studies with the following characteristics? One, it transcends the dichotomy of science and religion. Unfortunately, this dichotomy of science between science and religion is of a Western origin. It is not peculiar to Hinduism at all. Hinduism has no quarrel with science, has never had. It creates an alternative to Western humanities. The Western humanities is suffused with Western methodologies. And to the extent that Western humanities has become entrenched in the humanities in India, when Indians go to the humanities schools and colleges in India, and they do research in the humanities, no matter which field it is, they are merely copying and replicating Western thought about India. It's almost like a cut and paste. They are copying and replicating for the most part. Now, there are exceptions. I want to definitely acknowledge there are exceptions here and there, but there are very few and far between. We want to create a place for Hindu pramana as a valid episteme, meaning an approach to knowledge originating from the Hindu tradition as valid, legitimate, and contemporary, and it yields unique insights in the contemporary world. We want a place that distinguishes the uniqueness of Hindu cosmology, the Hindu paradigm, so to speak. It moves beyond the binary of secular versus religious. This secular versus religious is a disastrous binary that creates an opposition between people where such an opposition is not really necessary. People can be secular if they want to be. People can be religious if they want to be. They are not opposed to each other. The opposition arises from the fact that the secular people keep insisting that their way of being alone is legitimate and valid, and the religious way of being is obsolete and illegitimate. And so it creates oppositions. We need to move beyond that. And lastly, a university that recognizes the timeless relevance of Hindu Dharma. And based on this, we've set up a vision, mission, and goals for the university. Our vision is to promote dialogue across disciplines, cultures, and civilizations while enabling self-discovery, conscious evolution, and harmony We want the Hindu University of America to set the standard for the study of Hindu Dharma in contemporary times. It's easy, it's relatively easy to do because there's not a lot of it going on around the world, at least not from a Hindu perspective. Mission: Hindu University of America provides education and knowledge systems based in Hindu thought, involving critical inquiry, ethics, and self-reflection. Committed to fostering the culture and traditions of Hindu Dharma in an atmosphere of academic excellence and freedom, it prepares students for service, leadership, and global engagement. Global engagement. So we want this university to be contemporary, current, cutting edge, and able to bridge the world of ancient Hindu tradition and its modern contemporary application. So what are our three main goals and objectives? Number one is restoration. As a Hindu community, we need to recover and preserve the Hindu spiritual and intellectual capital for future generations in an academically rigorous setting. Now, insofar as this Hindu spiritual and intellectual capital has been preserved till date, it has happened largely in ashrams and gurukulams and remote places in India, for the most part. Traditions, sampradayas, which have survived through all this long historical period of destruction and wreckage. Hinduism has survived, but we want to establish a formal place for its recovery and preservation. Re-evaluation. Review and repair Orientalist and Indological narratives about Hindu culture and civilization. We want to deeply reflect on it, examine what they wrote about us. They as in Western scholars, European scholars, American scholars, what they continue to write about it. So we need to re-evaluate it, understand it, where they're coming from, what is the cosmology or paradigm that's informing what they're saying about Hinduism, and appropriately repair it, contest it, provide alternative narratives, and really in some way, develop an alternative paradigm. Lastly, contribution. We believe that there is a lot from Hinduism that is relevant for the contemporary world. We want to be able to articulate and offer a Hindu dharmic perspective and a spiritual character to an unsustainable and hyper-competitive world that we live in today. So with this vision and mission goals and objectives, we set about creating an academic platform. This is an online platform and therefore accessible from all over the world. We have 4 divisions: continuing education, undergraduate, graduate division, and advanced studies division. We want the advanced studies and undergraduate division to really make an impact, while the viability of the university is sustained by the undergraduate and continuing education divisions. We have lots of programs and 7 areas of study at the moment. We look briefly at the areas of study. Again, what makes Hindu University of America unique is that it has kind of a bifocal vision. On the one hand, we want to go deep into Hindu thought, immerse ourselves in Hindu thought, Hindu studies foundation, explore Hindu texts, get deep into Sanskrit, recover the language fully, restore the capacity to engage with Hindu texts in their own language, develop insight into Hindu texts and traditions, and of course, engage with yoga studies and so on. And in the future, we'll add more, Ayurveda and holistic health and so on. On the other hand, we also want to engage deeply with Western thought. And we've got a couple alternatives here: post-colonial Hindu studies, history and method, conflict and peace studies. All of these enable us to do comparative research, comparative studies, which put Western cosmology, Western paradigms, in juxtaposition with Hindu thought, Hindu cosmology. And we can then look at the two carefully, comparatively, and assess what value there may be in each, and how to develop a vision for the future that doesn't reject one for the other necessarily. You see, what can we live as a modern contemporary Hindu in today's world? So that's the question. Okay, let me ask the question: Can we live as a modern contemporary Hindu? Is it possible? Can you reply to the chat window, please? Is it possible? Can a Hindu be modern, contemporary, and be Hindu at the same time? Is that possible? Yes or no? Just give me an answer. Yes or no? Yeah. Some people are convinced it cannot be done. And I think for people who believe that, you have to abandon tradition in order to become modern and contemporary, for people who really believe that, I want to suggest to you, you have become conditioned to a view that has not been adequately investigated. Okay. See, modernity presents itself in opposition to tradition. In fact, it defines itself in opposition to tradition. If what it is to be modern is to abandon tradition, then you cannot be modern without abandoning Hinduism. Okay. But your definition, this definition of modernity, is not an Indian definition. It is a European definition, you see. Can we invent a definition of modernity that is not based intrinsically on a willful, wanton destruction and abandonment of tradition? That's the critical question of our time. Otherwise, the relentless march of modernity will of necessity destroy the wisdom of tradition as irrelevant to our lives. That is the question. Not everybody answered. I would like everybody to answer this question. Can you be a contemporary modern Hindu? And so, Satya Dosapati is saying we can live. We are living right now as a Hindu, living in the modern world. In some sense, yes. But what we are saying is we need to redefine modernity completely from a Hindu perspective, because we cannot keep living into somebody else's definition of modernity. Very quickly, the university has been through a recent rejuvenation process. And in the last quarter, we had about 550 students registering. And, we are very grateful for the continued growth of the university. And I want to invite everybody to participate in this growth and contribute to this growth. So we have about a little over 1,000 students in our learning management system today. And, it's capable of accommodating many, many more. The university has a terrific team. We built a huge team, a board of trustees, a board of overseers, a terrific group of faculty, and an administrative team that is working diligently to make this university possible. And lastly, I want to answer the question, why engage in Hindu studies? If at this time, if somebody comes to this university looking for a vocation or career, it'll not be possible to fulfill that. Why? Because there is no Hindu ecosystem that can readily absorb people with degrees in Hindu studies, master's degree, PhD degree, or undergraduate degrees in Hindu studies. An ecosystem doesn't exist for this kind of graduation. That doesn't mean that such an ecosystem will not emerge in the future. In fact, I would say one of our commitments is to develop that ecosystem, to engender that ecosystem, to seed that ecosystem, so that in time, fast forward 25 years, 50 years, Hindu studies is very common. It's offered in many, many universities. There are departments of Hindu studies in hundreds and thousands of universities in India and around the world. And being a Hindu in a modern context is not something peculiar or irrational, or weird. So at this time, what is the reason to engage with Hindu studies? Well, if you are simply looking for basic knowledge, worship, and practice and some spiritual advancement, you can probably get it from outside the academic environment. Family traditions are good, temples and rituals are adequate, ashrams and gurus are perhaps more than adequate. But if as a Hindu, you want to develop certain new capabilities, such as writing and articulation, becoming a consummate writer, an academic writer, a popular writer, if you want to become, develop a deep interest in teaching and research, in therapy and counseling from a Hindu context, participate in the media and public square, become a player in the domain of advocacy and policy, engage in debates and dialogues in the public square, participate in the transformation of not only yourself, but the communities in which you live and participate. Reacquire the representation of Hinduism, engage in appropriate levels of defense and contestation of Hindu Dharma, and participate at the edge of conflicts and peace and resolution of those conflicts. And lastly, to take control of and ownership of the narrative about Hinduism. Our view is a stint, a reasonable stint at Hindu University of America today, or any equivalent university, Hindu university, that brings a Hindu perspective to the table is going to be very, very important. Okay, I know that I speak in long sentences that don't seem to end, but nevertheless, if you follow the thought, they are coherent. They do tend to be long. So with that, the opportunity for us, for all of us, is to recover, restate, reacquire the timeless voice of Vedic Hindu wisdom and apply it to the domains of contemporary relevance, such as pluralism and cross-cultural understanding, sustainable ecosystems and climate change, holistic health and emotional well-being, business ethics, public service and leadership, education, families and communities, inequality, scarcity, poverty and justice, conflict, violence, terror and peace, and liberal arts, social sciences and humanities. And all of these are areas where Hindu thought can contribute something of tremendous value today, provided we develop the space, the capabilities to do so. And that's the unique value proposition of this university. And we want to invite people who are interested in exploration, and contribution, who want to participate in a space that allows for thoughtful research and publication. Now, that enables thoughtful contribution to humanity itself and its future, not just for India, but for the world. And lastly, to engage with the world as a Hindu with clarity and confidence, not just become defensive and confused at every opportunity of engagement, but to speak up, and find our voice, and find our writing pen, so we may write again, and speak again with confidence and clarity. So that is the university, basically. A lot of future possibilities as the ecosystem develops. There are many, many areas and fields and subfields to be developed. Some of them are more easy to do, others are a little more difficult to do. But in time, the Hindu University of America will seed, if you telescope out 100 years from now, 50 years from now, all these fields must develop. Some of them are already mature. Maybe they need an academic, a rigorous academic structure behind them. Some of these are not as developed. Some of these can be developed in the future. So the next steps are take advantage of the scholarship offers from Hindu University of America. Register into courses. And I'm highlighting the orientation to Hindu studies course as one course where you get an overview of the whole curriculum and engage in an excellent, kind of a survey of the field of Hindu studies as we have constituted it. And of course, by becoming a student, you'll be getting involved with the creation of a global Hindu university that's contemporary, cutting edge, online, easily accessible around the world, both in terms of technology as well as in terms of cost. Okay, with that, we're going to move into questions. And I will say one more thing before we start moving into Q&A, okay? So I want to show you the website. So this is the Hindu University of America website. Those of you who have not yet visited the website, you definitely should. It's very easy to get to, hua.edu. And here you have a lot of things. You have, for example, our programs, areas of study, and courses. So let me just touch on two of them. And we'll take a quick look at area of studies. We already looked at it: Hindu Studies Foundation, Sanskrit Studies, Yoga Studies, Texts and Traditions, Post-colonial Hindu Studies, and so on. And then we'll go look at courses. I'll zero in on these courses for the summer 2021 quarter. It's going to begin in the month of July. So here are a set of courses we are offering for the month of July. Okay, discover the contemporary relevance of Hindu Dharma. It's a course intended for young adults, 18 to 35 age group. Indian origins of mathematics for teens and parents. Race and Hindu reform. It takes a closer look at the Hindu Reformation movements of the Arya Samaj and Brahmo Samaj and other thinkers of that era. Hinduism and conflict resolution, that brings into juxtaposition Hindu ideas in the realm of conflict and peace to the contemporary modern ideas on conflict and conflict resolution. So here are two courses on yoga, the yoga of the Yoga Sutras. This will be taught in English. And here's another course, Sanskritam through Yoga Shastram. This is a course that will be taught entirely in Sanskrit. It's a Sanskrit medium course. Then you have Sanskrit courses themselves, intermediate Sanskrit. Mahabharata 4, epic philosophy. It's an in-depth look at Mahabharata, the philosophy of the Mahabharata. Then there is this course on Advaita, Visishtadvaita, and Dvaita, the three flavors of Vedanta Shastra. Youth Yoga Teacher Training. Learn Bhagavad Gita chapters 3 and 4. Distortions in Indian history. Historiography. In other words, why do historians keep on distorting India's history? Why do they do that? Why do they sidestep the facts and create an artificial, made-up history about India? Why do they keep doing that? So we look at that question in this course. Lessons from Valmiki Ramayana for teens and parents. Gita Vidya Sadhana for teens and parents. The Dharma of global sustainability. It deals with climate change, global warming, and all the consequences of that. Reconstructing Hindu history, the omissions. Now, what people do not mention when creating a story about world history, what they fail to mention about Hinduism, Hindu India. How Hindu Dharma transformed America. This is a very interesting course which deals with the history of how Hindu thought slowly over 200 years seeped into the American consciousness and how it has affected so many different fields of study in America itself. Exploring Hinduism for teens and parents. It's a great course taught by D.K. Hari and Hema Hari. It's a wonderful place for teenagers and parents to come together. Then there are some more Sanskrit courses at varying levels of sophistication and complexity. Holistic Yoga, Antaranga Yoga, Introduction to Bhagavad Gita is a graduate level course. Much deeper exposition of Bhashyas on Bhagavad Gita. Orientation to Hindu Studies, of course, which I am welcoming everybody to start with. Beginning Sanskrit, etc. So all those courses, about 26 courses are on offer for the summer quarter. Next, I want to take you to the scholarships page. We are very, very happy to announce, that we have brought forth a scholarship program. And scholarships are now available for Greater Bharat subcontinent, Bharat and Bharatiya and nearby countries, such as Bharat, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, etc. This scholarship is available for continuing education courses only, and it makes available all continuing educations for approximately $100. Approximately, you may give or take a few dollars. You'll apply a formula and you'll get the course for around $100 US dollars, which is about 75,000 rupees in Indian rupee terms. Okay, and how to apply for a scholarship is you fill out this form. You have to prove that your residency is in India with some kind of ID and submit it. Once you hit the submit button, you'll get a scholarship code which you can apply to buy courses from Hindu University of America. Okay, so that is my invitation. That's the announcement regarding the scholarship. I will stop here. And let's take a look at the Q&A section, okay?
Right. What a wonderful, beautiful presentation, Gayanji. I think you get better and better. You should definitely, if you're watching this webinar, enroll in the Orientation to Hindu Studies course. You get Gayanji for 11 weeks, and each week you're introduced to different aspects of the university, other professors, and Gayanji so methodically has put this together. So we have a couple questions in the Q&A box. I dropped some links to the scholarship, to the summer courses in the chat. Please click, look around, investigate. Gayanji, is there a particular question you want to start off with?
So there is somebody called Dilip Kelkar who's saying, am I going to get a chance to speak? So Dilipji, can you put a chat on the chat window? Can you please write a note on what you would like to speak about, and we'll consider that. Okay. So here's a question: what is the distinction between Hinduism and Shaivism? Okay. See, Hinduism consists of many sampradayas. Okay, and there are many sampradayas. So there are, it's not one religion. Hinduism is not a religion. Religion is a Western word. Sanatana Dharma consists of many sampradayas. So Shaiva is a sampradaya. Hinduism religion is shown as Pakan. Can it be presented as? Yeah, the dichotomy between religion and science is a Western creation. It is born of a Western experience, and we have to move past that dichotomy that is being relentlessly driven around the world in the Western humanities in order to reclaim an understanding of Hinduism that doesn't make it opposed to science. Because Hinduism is not opposed to science at all, really speaking. In creating an alternative to Western humanities, is HUA following a template of any ex-colonial country or culture? Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, while there is a discipline called post-colonial studies around the world, there is no such thing called post-colonial Hindu studies. There's no such thing. It is as though the post-colonial scholars, even of Indian origin, Hindu origin, they end up becoming kind of colonial narrators of history, and they simply kind of walk gently into the trap of the colonial narratives and end up simply replicating the colonial criticism about Hinduism. So is there a clear model for us? We are looking at some of the key post-colonial thinkers, such as who? Edward Said, Albert Memmi, such as Frantz Fanon, but whose commentary was not centered on Hinduism at all. They were speaking for Islam in other countries. And then, of course, there are some Indian scholars we are very interested in, like Balagangadhara Rao from Ghent University, such as Arvind Sharma, and we'll be looking at them as well. But we are creating an entirely new template, that much you can be sure. Is there an age limit to join the university? Absolutely not. Everybody's welcome. Okay. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The Shastras. See, the diversity of the Hindu Shastras, which were developed across many years, many centuries, across a whole big millennia, really speak. I mean, we're talking about 3,000 to 5,000 years of history now. I mean, you look at the date of the Mahabharata, traditional dating puts it at 3000 BC. That's a long time. The countries like England and Europe are so young in comparison to that kind of longevity. And so there is a lot of sorting out to do in terms of, going through Shastras developed in various times, reconciling differences, and writing new Shastras. See, why have we stopped writing new Shastras? What prevents us? So these are some of the questions we need to address. Hindu University will play definitely a role here. We want to build a Hindu intellectual ecosystem in which many people can participate. Scholarships apply to students. Well, in our mind, anybody who wants to take a course with Hindu University of America becomes a student. By the way, even though I am the president of Hindu University of America, I am also a student of Hindu University of America. Why? I take courses with HUA. And I don't even ask for a scholarship. I pay for every course that I take with Hindu University of America. Okay, so everybody can be a student. And in fact, Hinduism promotes intrinsically lifelong learning. You know, you learn something in brahmacharya, you learn something else in grihasthashrama, you study something else in vanaprastha, and even sannyasa. You don't never stop studying. You know, studying is a learning, intellectual and spiritual engagement is intrinsic to Hinduism. So therefore, we welcome students of all ages, all kinds of professions, IT professions, any profession, teachers, professors, please. Do we get study materials and assignments? Absolutely, you will get lots and lots of them. You will have to write papers in advanced classes, write short essays in continuing education.
Gayanji, can I jump in? I've also taken a course just this last quarter for reconstructing Hindu history with Dr. Rajvedam. Satish Kumarji asked in the chat, do you think that will be relevant to start a course explaining science, astronomy, medicine, and our ancient scriptures? Well, through the different courses at HUA, we are digging into all of this stuff, and the assignments are organized in our learning management system. So when you enroll with HUA, you get an @hua.edu email address. Courses are organized online week by week. Links are there. Reading material is easily accessible. We have a whole staff to support you, answer questions, make sure that you're attending course. We record the courses. You can, if you miss a course, you can attend and review and catch up later. But the beauty of this is wherever you are, you can interact with other Hindus in a subject, and non-Hindus who are interested in Hindu Dharma in all of these different subjects, right? 26 courses, and Gayanji went through all of them just this summer quarter. Our overall course catalog is over 120 courses, and each quarter we're bringing in new and innovative courses and ideas to share with you all. So again, we're on social media. Please follow us there, engage in this conversation, help us, you know, build this institution and be a part of it in whatever way you feel is best for you.
Okay, are we going to get introduced to other scriptures like Vedas and Puranas? Yeah, absolutely. It depends on how serious you are and how far you want to go. Are all courses online? Yes, they are. All courses are online. In the future, we'll have campuses. We'll have campuses all over the world, hopefully, and you know, there'll be places to meet periodically and come to retreats and you know, sit around a campfire and learn in traditional Gurukula-like settings. Okay, so here is some more questions. Why am I able to scroll here?
We've answered quite a few of the questions. If you just put your name in the Q&A box or said Om, I just moved that off. We have about 4 open questions.
How this knowledge is going to be brought to poor people who are unaware about the value of Sanatana Dharma? That's a great question. Okay. See, I think first of all, you know, one of the characteristics of contemporary Hinduism, contemporary Hindus, is that in order to survive ourselves, in order to focus on our own personal advancement, we have tended to neglect the needs and aspirations of the poor and the people who are kind of left out of the opportunities of becoming a contemporary and rise in income, and you know, a citizen who advances themselves effectively. Okay, and how this knowledge can be brought to the poor, it has to be done in a way that elevates them in their lives. And in the first step, it has to be focused on the eradication of poverty. So, you know, I would strongly suggest that Hindus who are taking advantage of this education, you know, we develop an interest in that eradication of poverty and join such service organizations, seva organizations that are fully engaged in that, and expand them and support them and so on. So these are not two separate things, you know, they are correlated, connected, complementary. Yeah, all the courses are online. Okay, there's nothing to be said about that. Yeah, the anonymous attendee is saying, can we have some courses for school children? Yeah, the teenagers and parents courses are intended to be taken by teenagers and parents together. And the parents who join along with the teenagers are going to discover how much they don't know about Hinduism. And so they can't really answer their children's questions when they themselves don't know. So, it's going to be remarkable. And unless you take the course, you can't find out. That is it for kids. Okay, we're not going to go into kindergarten and all that. As a university, we're going to stay at the university level. How about the case of a student from Malaysia who wishes to pursue a PhD program? Of course, you can pursue a PhD program. You had to apply first, start with the orientation to Hindu studies course, and then we'll definitely consider your application for scholarship and so on. Yeah, so let's see. Dilip Kelkar said he wanted to say something, but Dilip Kelkarji, I'm not recognizing your name. Can you say something on the chat window, please? I'm not recognizing your name. Yeah, course fees are listed in the course fee pages. And for people based in India and surrounding countries, the scholarship that we are announcing today will make the courses available for approximately 7,500 rupees, Indian rupees, which is equivalent to about $100 US across the board. Okay.
Well, yeah. So again, I put the links to some of these things if you weren't able to get that into the chat. We have weekly Saturday in Los Angeles webinars, and the webinar that's going to follow kind of right after this in about an hour is highlighting 4 of our courses. And Gayanji is going to be on there again. And we do these. I dropped the link for that, and you can sign up. And just like this webinar, this town hall where we gave an overview of Hindu University of America, week by week, we invite prominent Hindus, academics, our own faculty, other people to have conversations and do a webinar on topics that are hopefully interesting to you. Please consider joining those into the future as well. Those are absolutely free.
Okay, so I want to say this, Dilip, to Mr. Dilip Kelkar, who's asking to speak. I just want to say that I am not able to recognize your name, sir. My apologies to you. I'm not sure exactly. If you can put something on the chat window or the Q&A box, we will be able to better respond to you. Wait, any other questions? There's another one.
Yes, please. Now, if you have a question, type it into the Q&A box. We have a few more minutes. And again, it's a pleasure. Thank you for all being on. We had almost 100 people on today for this town hall. Please share the word, get involved, get engaged. And again, the most basic course, the one that we encourage people to start off with, is the Orientation to Hindu Studies with Gayan Vishwanathan, the president of Hindu University of America. It's an 11-week course. Again, with the scholarship, it is going to come out to about 7,500 rupees. And it's been an exciting journey for me personally. Shrikantji kind of outlined at the start as a student what it's meant for him, and you will not be disappointed. The reason why we have grown is because the quality of our courses, the quality of the courses and what is offered and what we're doing.
And the faculty. I mean, I think it's important to say that too. So, somebody's asking a question on the chat window. How does a PhD program work in HUA? I mean, it works much like any other PhD program. So, please get involved, and we can get into more detail subsequently. Yeah, all courses will be recorded and accessible to students who have registered for those courses. We're not making recordings available outside the courses.
But each individual course is live. You get to interact with our renowned faculty and ask questions as part of their, part of the course. So we encourage you to attend live, but if you can't, then you will have access.
Okay. So I think we've exhausted the questions. I just want to say that Ankur, why don't you put the orientation course again on the chat window? I just want to say that, I appreciate everybody who joined today. From whichever part of the world you are joining from, I want to thank you for joining, and I appreciate you for giving us your time to hear about this university. This university belongs to the Hindu community worldwide, okay? And, just remember that I am, for the moment, playing the role of a facilitator for the moment, okay? This university will live for 1,000 years. There'll be many, many people who will provide leadership in the future. For the moment, I have the privilege of guiding its development. I'm very happy to do that, and I also very grateful for your interest and time that you gave to us to listening today, and look forward to seeing you in our courses this quarter. Okay, with that, I think we can conclude the webinar. Thank you. Namaste, everybody. Thank you. Namaste. Namaskar. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.